If you've ever wondered about club basketball and whether or not your kids should play, then you need to listen in because my guest, Adam Rankin, has a lot of experience with the sport, and today he's going to explain the benefits and disadvantages of club basketball and tell you why it's important that your kid starts at an early age. So tune in, listen up, and share this with anybody who loves the sport as Adam breaks down club basketball today on the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
Welcome back to the Game Time Guru. I'm Shane Larson, and before we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody that you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and you can even go down to the Anchor app and download that. Find me on there. I do some daily quick takes with, hot topics in sports every day. So find me on Anchor, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. But also, please go and subscribe to my show on iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Google Play Music, wherever you can find me, or even go to my website, www.thegametimeguru.com, and you can find me there. Now, today, I have a special guest with me. His name is Adam Rankin, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about club sports. But first, I want Adam to introduce himself. So, Adam, thanks for joining the show, and can you give a little bit of an introduction of who you are and, your background in basketball?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me, Shane. I appreciate it. I like your podcast. I've listened to a number of them, so I highly recommend everyone follow your page and take a listen. So, again, as you just stated, my name is Adam Rankin. I'm from the Boise, Idaho area, born and raised. I played varsity basketball at Boise High School. And after that, played college basketball in California at a junior college called Foothill College next to San Francisco. After that, I was a graduate of finished my undergraduate degree at University of Idaho, and spent some time living in the Portland area, about 8 years, and moved back, about 4 years ago. And so I have three little boys, ages 10, 7, and 6, that have started started playing club basketball. So because I'm raising these boys that are playing basketball and involved with basketball, I myself have become involved in club basketball, so become pretty familiar and have organized a club to play against other club teams, and so have had to become familiar with what club basketball is, what it is here, how is it different from other areas, spending some time in Portland and coming here and the differences. And then I've also coached high school basketball. While I was in Portland, I coached junior varsity basketball at a private school called Catlin Gable. Okay. I coached junior varsity basketball there, and since I've been here, last year I coached junior varsity girls at North Star Charter School. So I coached their high school JV girls team and am taking over their boys varsity program this year, and have coached them through the summer up to this point.
That is awesome. Okay, so you've got quite a bit of experience, not only from the playing level, but from the coaching level as well. So that's pretty awesome. And one thing you kept mentioning was club basketball. We hear club basketball, club basketball, club basketball. And that's basically, what we wanted to talk about today was club basketball. What exactly is it? So you mentioned that your boys are coming up. You got 3 of them, and they're coming up, they're playing, and you're becoming more and more familiar with it. Can you explain exactly what is club basketball?
Yeah, that's a great question. Club basketball didn't really even exist when I was growing up here in Boise, Idaho. Once I got older, up into the upper grades in high school to about junior and senior years, there were some AAU teams I guess some kind of club basketball teams, not even close to the extent of organization that there is now with them. So I'd kind of seen that in high school, but now it's just a whole different deal and setup in regards to the organization and how many of them there are and when they start and everything else like that. So now I guess kids start playing club basketball around the grades of around second or third grade, and all they are is some in Boise. What they are is private organizations that have sprung up to teach the game of basketball to kids, and they practice a couple days a week and start training in the game of basketball at an early age. And here in Boise it starts about third grade and it goes from third to 12th grade. So that's essentially what it is. If you don't have a child involved in it, you might not even be aware of its existence and what is going on. I've talked to people that, and even I've talked to people that have kids that really like basketball, and they don't even know that this kind of club subculture or this club basketball culture exists. And they'll have a kid that plays, YMCA basketball because that's what they had when they were kids. And they just don't even know that these clubs exist and there's kids at their kids' grade level or age that are training a couple times a week. So
Go ahead.
It's kind of a newer thing, I guess, in the sense that it hasn't been around that long, and it certainly wasn't around as much as it is now when I was a kid. So players are getting better at shooting. They're getting better offensively. They're getting better at defensively, than they really ever have been because of the amount of time that they're putting in through basically what's developed in through club basketball.
Right. And it's interesting because, like you said, I mean, you mentioned that wasn't really around or it wasn't really well known or anything when you were, going through school and growing up through, the grade levels and such. I felt the same way. I mean, we're both from the Boise area. When I was in high school, I mean, we're talking only 10 years ago even, the only club that I even knew of was called Boise Flight, and it wasn't really well known unless you were like a top-notch player. They were, nobody knew about it unless you had a friend that was playing for them. Idaho Select was one of them, but we never really heard about anything. And you mentioned YMCA basketball, Y ball is what they call it, and that's kind of how like we came up through the ranks just playing Y ball, and then AAU was another one when we got into middle school. So is club basketball AAU, or is there a difference? And if there is a difference, what is that difference?
So there is a big difference in the Boise area between what is AAU here and what is club basketball here. And it's not like that in other cities or necessarily other states, but AAU and club basketball can be synonymous in other areas. But here in Boise, AAU is much different. And that's because AAU here is is run by the YMCA. And so the way that it works here is that AAU has basically become Y-ball in Boise, and it's because the YMCA runs that league. And because of the requirements to join that league, to join the YMCA's AAU league, clubs aren't able to join it. So clubs cannot participate in the AAU league. Even if they are a part of the AAU member organization, because of the way that the AAU league in Boise is set up, they cannot join the league. and specifically the AAU league here in Boise is done by boundaries. So the teams are formed according to boundaries. So I don't know if you've ever seen like the Mighty Ducks. Like in the Mighty Ducks, the hockey teams are formed according to boundaries. And if you don't live within a certain boundary, you can't be a part of a certain team. So what's happened in Boise is you have two separately run, I guess you have the AAU league run by the YMCA, and then you have all these different club teams. And the club teams form their teams without regard to where the kids live. They'll take kids from anywhere. They hold a tryout, and if a kid wants to play for their club, they'll take them. It doesn't matter where they live. Because of that, they'll have a kid from West Boise. They'll have, they may have a kid from West Boise. They may have a kid from Meridian. They might have a kid from Southeast or South Boise, or barely touching Nampa. So because that club team has players from all over, they can't enter the AAU tournament, or they can't enter the AAU league. So So that's the difference. So you have these AAU teams that are run by the YMCA, and then it's kind of a problem for parents. It's like, as a parent, what do? Do you put your kid in a club team that they can't play in the AAU league, or do you put your kid in the AAU league? And what has happened is the club team. There's just so many club teams that have come up in the Boise area, and they're just a lot more competitive. Then the AAU program is just watered down. It's just not competitive. The talent level isn't as high because a lot of the best players are like, we're just going to play for our club. We don't care about playing in the AAU league. And so then what has happened is it's just all the better players in the area have decided just to not go into the AAU system here in Boise, and they just stick with their club teams. So there is no association or league that brings all the club teams together in the Boise area, which is kind of ridiculous. So in the Boise area, you have some of the bigger clubs are Hoop Dreams, Boise Slam, Idaho Elite. There's a Christian-based one called Ignite. There's one in Middleton called Inferno. There's one in Nampa called Evolution. There's another one in Nampa called Up Tempo. So you have all these clubs that have sprung up, and there's no association bringing them together. Like soccer is kind of similar to basketball in that you have these different clubs. You got Boise Nationals, you got Nova, all these different club soccer teams. And then there's an Idaho Soccer Association that brings them together and schedules games. For club basketball, there's no association that brings them together. So it's just different clubs, different basketball minds, different basketball players that had kids or decided, for whatever reason, to develop their own kids, or for whatever reason they decided to start a club and start training basketball players, and it's just each of them are on an island, and there's nothing that brings them together. So
in regards to that,
versus AAU, versus AAU, they're just all, a part of the YMCA league. So that's the difference between AAU here and club here. And so it's a constant, there's a constant struggle between the two. And parents face, issues of what do we put our kid in? Do we put them in AAU? Do we put them in club? And there's a constant struggle between resources, because the YMCA has an agreement with the school districts here, which gives them exclusive use to their gyms.
Okay.
There's a battle for resources between different clubs that have formed up, and then the AAU system. So that's kind of, so there's definitely, the club teams here are definitely different from AAU, and it's kind of a complex issue, I guess. I don't know. There's a lot of parts to it as to why it is what it is, but it's basically that the YMCA controls AAU, and a lot of the clubs view it as an inferior product, and they can't enter their teams in it, so they just forego the AAU system. And one of the things is that the YMCA is the AAU program doesn't go over a very long period of time. It's basically during the fall. Versus now sports like basketball here isn't year-round, although it is in other areas. And whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's not year-round. But it certainly is longer than a 2-month season or 2.5-month season, which is basically what AAU in Boise offers. So if you're serious about basketball and you're a third grader or a fourth grader or whatever, a fifth grader, sixth grader, seventh grader, and you want to improve your skills and you want to compete, not only in Boise but nationally. You want to go to a major school. You need to put in the time, and where do you put in that time in Boise? AAU doesn't offer that. They offer a 2-month time period. So you have to go into a club to get that time, but the club teams can't enter the AAU league that's set up here. So, and nobody has set up another AAU, like somebody could set up another AAU league. AAU is a national organization, and they could set up one separate from the YMCA, but nobody's done that. So,
okay.
So the club teams are definitely separate from the AAU system. And if you're not educated about what club basketball is here in Idaho, what it is here in Boise, like I said, you could have a fifth grader or a fourth grader who, you have them play Y-ball. They play Y-ball. They play 8 games a year or whatever in November and December. And you see your kid playing Y-ball, and you think, wow, they're a good Y-ball player. And then they hit 5th grade, which is when AAU starts in Boise, and you put them in AAU, and they're doing really well in the AAU, and you think, man, they're really good at basketball. You just missed the boat because none of the good players, none of the people that are passionate about, none of the basketball players that are passionate about basketball are playing in Y-ball or playing in AAU in Boise. They're playing club.
They're playing club sports. I get that. That's really interesting. Now, in regards to like the tournaments, so you mentioned that like you can't join the AAU organizations because it's ran by the Y-ball, ran by the YMCA, I should say. And so they don't allow the club teams. And then you mentioned a ton of club teams that we have in the Treasure Valley. That's just here in Idaho. And I mean, we're not even talking about the other states right now. Then where exactly do the kids compete? Like what kind of tournaments do these club teams participate in? And you mentioned they may be outside of Idaho even?
Yes, absolutely. Some of them compete a lot of tournaments outside of Idaho. But because there's no league, but there's a demand for somebody to organize games for these different clubs. I mean, there's, a whole bunch of them, a whole bunch of these clubs, and they all need teams to play against. So what has happened is there's an organization in Nampa, not affiliated with AAU, just a private organization, privately run, non-governmental, that has developed. And that organization is called Crash the Boards. And they put on tournaments. They don't offer a league, where you can just sign up and say, we're going to enter your league, and there's 8 or 10 games for the season. There's no league. So it's on a tournament basis, and they provide a tournament almost every week. Last year, during the winter months, they're providing a tournament almost every week. And they use Nampa middle schools for their tournaments. And so you pay them a fee, and then every club goes out. Not every club, but a lot of the clubs go out there, and they play tournaments every week or every 2 weeks, and that's how they get competition. That's how they play games. And so, yeah, so that's how it's done. It's kind of a different deal, and it's kind of a mess in the sense that you have people coming from the north end, okay, or the foothills. You have people coming from southeast, driving all the way to Nampa so that their kids can play basketball, because nobody in Boise has been able to figure out how to start a league that these clubs can play in. So that's where it's just kind of loosey goosey. It's a mess. There's nothing binding these clubs together. So, and then you'll have certain clubs that, maybe they had a bad experience with the organization in Nampa, or for whatever reason they don't like it. Well, then where do you play games? So you go out. Your only option is to go out of state. And then you may think that there's clubs that may think that they can't even get good quality competition here. We're just going to go out of state. So a lot of teams will go out of state more than they play games here. They'll enter more tournaments out of state than they will in the Idaho region for whatever reason. So,
Gotcha.
And I would imagine that, while it's frustrating and I'm sure it costs more to play out of state, at least you get the exposure and the level of competition changes a little bit. I mean, I know even for us, when, we play in just some 3-on-3 basketball tournaments now that I'm getting older. I mean, don't really play anything more than that. But when we travel out of state to play in those, I can just tell the competition's a whole nother level in different states. You get to, see different competition. So I guess it's good for the kids, but at the same time, you always have to deal with, the expenses that go along with traveling.
Right. No, absolutely. You're exactly right. Going out of state, out of town for exactly what you just stated is, it costs a lot of money to do that, but there's just so much gained from doing that. And the level of Boise basketball in Boise is just not, and in Idaho, it's not what it is in other areas in terms of the talent level and everything else. And so going and seeing that level is motivating for a player. You think, hey, I'm good in Boise. Well, how do I compare to, if you play against, a team from Sacramento or Oakland or Seattle? It's just it's kind of an eye opener. And
right,
and they're further along. Those cities are further along in the programs that they have and what they offer, and there's a reason why they're better.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, it sounds like, from your perspective, that the club sports are the way to go. Now, one question that always comes up though is, how does it conflict with, or I shouldn't say conflict, but how does it go with high school? Let's say when you get to that high school level, now that you've gone up the grades and you're, now you're in high school and you've got your high school basketball that lasts a couple of months. Now that they're getting, more and more intense, basketball starts, your off season's always going. So, I mean, how does it run with your high school basketball, and which one's better? I know Vince Horderman actually touched base on this when I interviewed him a few weeks ago, but I kind of want your perspective on it in regards to club sports or high school sports. Should you choose one over the other, or should they both run, together?
Right. Well, I think that the choice isn't really there once you get to high school, because clubs just really shut down during the high school season. So they aren't even.
Okay.
The choice more comes, I think, in middle school. So when you get to middle school, it's the level of middle school basketball it's just not very high. There's more middle schools than there are high schools, and then as there's more elementary schools than there are middle schools, and as the kids get older, they get at least in the Boise area, there's more kids at a high school than there is at an elementary school, right? And then there's more kids at a high school than there is at a middle school. So because of that, more kids are getting cut. right? At high school, they're just
Right.
every year that they go, there's more kids getting cut, and so the level of basketball is higher in high school than it is at middle school. So if you're serious about basketball in middle school and the level of basketball isn't necessarily that high as compared to club basketball, then you have to make a decision like, am I going to play for my club and just not play middle school, or am I going to play, or am I going to play for my school team, which could put me in a difficult situation with my club because they're going to want me to continue playing, or may want me to continue playing middle school basketball, club basketball during my middle school season. So the choice isn't there. Now in Boise, like, everybody knows, no kid's going to forego their high school season. So the choice isn't really there. But really, I think, like, there's this book by, I think his name is, like, Malcolm Gladwell, okay, and it talks about, like, what it takes to become an expert in something. And that's where this 10,000 hour theory comes up, that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. Well, the high school season just isn't long enough. It's like, so that's the reason that clubs exist, is because there's kids that want to put in more work and are willing to put in more work. They want to get better, and they need more time to do it. They need more practice time. They need players to play against, practice against, things like that. And so that's where the club comes in. And club goes longer than the high school season, because, like for Idaho Select, they're playing all through the summer, and I don't know necessarily about Idaho Select, because they're kind of a different type of animal in the clubs here in Boise. But you'll have somebody like Hoop Dreams that plays, from November to all through the summer, from November to August, so that's, and then they'll take times off. They can take times off for high school, but the high school season is like only like 3 months, so they're spending more time with their club than they are with their high school. And now, essentially club has become, as far as like getting better, like the skill improvement, like they always say athletes are made in the off season, right? Like teams are made in the season, athletes are made in the off season. I think the athletes, because they're spending more time with their club than they are with their high school, then they're getting better than in their clubs than they are at the high school. And not only that, like, it's no longer, I don't think it's like, what did you do in high school? Like if you look at a player's biography, like when they get recruited by a college or whatever, they'll do a little write-up on them, like, this is what they did in high school. Their team won state. They averaged 20 points a game. Well, now what they're saying, they're now including their club basketball experience. Like, people want to know, what club did they play at? Like, they'll say they played for so-and-so club, and they were tournament MVP of this tournament. And so club has become, like, what you've done in club basketball is kind of like more important now than what you've done in high school, because so that's kind of where the club is just taken over. And I think it's just the amount of the regulations that limit the high school's ability to go longer than what athletes think is needed to get better. The high schools are just limited to how much they can develop an athlete, and clubs aren't. There's no rules or regulations regarding how long you can go, how much you can practice, and that type of thing. So clubs have just really taken over as far as player development, player exposure, that type of thing.
And it sounds like it's starting to weigh more and more heavily on the recruiting process. If the kids are really serious about, taking it to the next level, going to the collegiate level for basketball, they are looking at the club sports more. And so I was just going to ask you, in regards to that, it sounds like, if you're a parent, your kids want to play basketball, it's probably a smarter decision for the athlete themselves to actually participate in club sports as well as, their school when it gets to the high school level. Now, which club should they choose? So how does a parent decide which club their kid needs to play for if they truly want the right development? Because you mentioned there's a ton of clubs, especially the younger levels. How does a parent choose for their kids?
Yeah. I think it's a lifelong process, right? I mean, it's like, I think if your kid isn't playing club basketball, and some people may disagree with this, but if your kid isn't playing club basketball, like starting at third grade to sixth grade, I mean, unless they're just freakishly athletic, they're getting left behind. With the amount of time that a third grader puts on the court in club basketball, they're practicing twice a week, playing in these tournaments. The amount of time that they're putting in, they're just going to be so much more skilled than a player that doesn't put in the time, unless they're just freakishly athletic, which isn't a whole lot of kids. There's just athleticism. They're just that much more of an athlete, and so the skill doesn't matter as much. So, it's really got to be that decision varies by age, but as to what club is best for a kid, I mean, it's gonna depend by age. But I think there's some certain things that they stay the same no matter what age they are, and one of it is the amount of times that they practice. Okay, the amount of players that they're practicing with, and then costs, and then coaches, and then the coach's ability to coach. Okay, and then I would take after that, the club director's ability to run a club, how organized they are, that type of thing. But for instance, so one of the things that's happened is there's a strain for resources here in Boise, for gym space, so money has become a motivating factor, right? And the more kids you bring in, the more money you bring in. Well, so there's a motivation from a financial side is to bring 20, 25 kids in, per grade. Okay, so you got third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. There's a financial motivation to bring in 25 kids because more kids, more money. The downside of that as a parent, the downside of that is that the kid suffers being taught. It's really hard to teach 25 kids the way that they need to be taught and the attention that they need to be given with that large of a group. That's one thing. That's one of the problems here in Boise is that a lot of the clubs that are established are just there's so much of a strain on resources that there's just too many kids on one team, and then or a part in one practice, and then also you got to think about how much is this going to cost, type of thing. How much are they charging? What's the profit motivation of the people running the club? Some clubs are run by some coaches have coaches that are being paid. Well, you kind of got to weigh that. It's one is that you're not going to have a dad coach the team. You're having somebody that's being paid coach the team. So what are the advantages versus disadvantages of that? You have an advantage would be you have somebody that doesn't really isn't going to favor one kid over another because none of their kids are there. They don't have a kid in it. A disadvantage would be that you're having to pay that person for that person's time. They may not be as passionate about putting in as much time as they would if they had a kid involved. So that's kind of it. I mean, the amount of money that is needed, to put your kid in a club, and then who are the coaches? Do they have the expertise needed? Do you think that going with a club that's run by parents versus a club that's run by non-parents is better? And then, who is your kid? How many kids is your kid going to be training with? And then besides that, I would say like playing time, like how, like when you get to like the younger grades, like, well, and really all grades, like your kid needs to be able to play in games to develop. And so
Right.
you're talking about like if you take a third grader and you just didn't play them because they're not as good, like in games, first of all, what does that do to a third grader mentally? Like how bad would they feel about themselves? Second, like they're not going to develop, right? Because like the guy sitting next to him that's playing the whole game is going to develop more, right? Like a game after game, you play a 20-game season, and this kid played every minute of every game, and your kid played 3 minutes. Like that's not a good situation. So you got to look at the size of the teams, what their playing time philosophy is. Idaho. Speaking of Idaho Select, from my understanding of talking with those guys, is they run with 8 guys, which is an ideal number. Because with 8 guys, you get everybody gets enough playing time. Versus if you take 12 guys to go into a game with 12 guys, there's just it's a lot harder to get 12 guys into a game. I mean, somebody's not going to play half the game with 12 guys. You take 10 guys, each only plays half the game. So 8 guys, well, now everybody's playing more than half the game.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for the information, especially everything you've shared today on the show. It's a lot more information than I had before. And like I said, for people like myself, I mean, I've been around the sport my entire life, but in regards to club sports, I don't know a lot. And this is something that's newer to me. So hopefully the listeners, especially here in the Boise Valley, can take something from it and learn and realize, the importance of club sports, especially club basketball, if their kids are really serious about taking that next step. Before we get going, though, Adam, do you have any final words you'd like to say, anything like that before we head out?
As I've navigated this, I've started a club, and that my son has played on. We've formed a team that we've run the last 2 years, and it's called Team Approach, and we're going to have tryouts next week for our club, and we're basically having tryouts for grades 2nd through 6th, and so if there's anybody out there that has an interest for their child to come try out for our club, we'd love to have you. It's going to be at North Star Charter School at 6 p.m. next Monday on July 31st.
Great. And outside of this podcast, Adam, how can they find information about Team Approach?
We're really small, and we kind of have a personal dynamic going in that we run a small program in small teams. So there's a lot of personal interaction. I haven't formed a website. They can go to our Facebook page. They search Team Approach Boise. But other than that, they're going to have to seek me out, or seek somebody else that's involved with Team Approach. I would say go to our Facebook page and search us out that way. We're kind of like a word-of-mouth organization. I'm not trying to create some huge business or anything else like that.
All right. No, for sure. So everybody out there, if you're interested in it, follow his Facebook page. Like you just said, go over there and like it. And then if you have any questions, you can message straight from there to see if you can get any more information about his club team that he's got going on, the club organization. And once again, Adam, I just wanted to say thanks for joining me here on the Game Time Guru. And I'm sure you and I will be seeing each other. I mean, somewhere around in the basketball tournaments around the city and stuff. So
you guys beat us last year in Bam Jam, and you guys had a great team. Had some great shooters, and you hit some good threes. So hopefully we don't see you guys in Bam Jam again.
Yeah, man, it's always a good time playing against y'all. All right, Adam. Well, we'll talk to you soon, man, and appreciate you joining me for the show.